So far, we've achieved some very cool looking styles, but here's where it starts getting very, very interesting. We're going to explore how we can take elements and transform their attributes in 2 and 3 dimensions. So let's get started. I've set up a list of thumbnails right here, and I've placed them inside a div with an ID of pictures. Each one of the thumbnails has its own ID so that I can target each element individually. So that I could, for example, translate just a spoon, just the fireworks, or just a cake. So I'm going to move up here and I'm going to start working on different transformations on just the spoon. I'm going to use WebKit transform and I'm going to do a rotation of 45 degrees. So you can see over here, just this element rotated 45 degrees. In addition to rotation, I can do a scale, and scale works from 0 to whatever. So say 0 would be invisible. Anything in between, 1 would be 100%, 2 is twice as big. Anything in between there, so 1.5 times, will be 1.5 times, 0.75. You can use any of those right there and they'll work. Okay, you can also do a transformation called a translation. On some transformations, we have to specify different measurements. So for example, in translation, we have to specify pixels. When we do rotation, we have to specify degrees. And so you just have to be careful that you are putting in the right numbers. So translation requires a pixel amount, and translation will work by default with one value by moving something to the right or to the left. So if you want something to move to the right, you just type in 50 pixels to the right. If you want it to move to the left, you hit the minus sign first and it moves it 50 pixels to the left. You can also transform in 2 dimensions. So if you do 50 pixels and 10 pixels, it'll move something to the left 50 pixels and down 10 pixels. You can also combine multiple translations or transformations by just separating them with spaces. So if we want to translate this 50 pixels to the right and then rotate it, we could just add those 2 transformations by separating them with spaces, and we can add as many as we want. So we can also do a scale here if we wanted to. And it would just continue to apply all those transformations to the object. Let's go back to just a rotation. Okay, by default, transformations are applied to the center of the object. So you can tell that this object is rotated around its center. We can change what the object is rotated against by adding in a transform origin command here. So we'll put in WebKit transform origin, and we can specify 0, 0, 2 values here. So this puts the origin of the transformation at the top left-hand side of the image. Now you can specify the transform origin with pixels. So if you wanted to move the origin of this transformation 100 pixels to the right, you could do that by typing in the number right here. Now it's a little bit better to just use percentages for transform origins because they allow you to not have to worry about how big an image is. So you could say, I want this image to be 100% to the right and 0 to the top, which means it'll rotate it around the image's right side regardless of the size of the image. And that's really useful. So we could type in 100% here and it'll rotate it around the bottom right-hand side. We can also transform in 3 dimensions by specifying a rotate Y in degrees here. And unfortunately, you notice that it doesn't exactly look like it's got perspective in it. It's because the image has been flattened after it's been rotated. And so we can't really see the perspective in the image. So we need to add a WebKit perspective parameter, but it can't go in the image itself. A WebKit perspective has to belong to the parent of the image. This is why we put the list of images inside this div. So we'll go up here to the pictures and change the WebKit perspective. And we'll put in a number there. And you can see that now the image looks like it has a little bit of a perspective. You can play around with that number to achieve different perspective effects. Now, if we want to, we can apply a transformation to all of the images at the same time. So what we'll do here is we'll add the transformation to the UL element. In addition to all the images being inside this div, they're also inside this UL or unordered list. So we can also target all of the images by modifying the unordered list itself. So we'll add a WebKit transform and rotate all the images along the y-axis, 45 degrees. I want to change the perspective so it's not as dramatic to show you something that happened here. If you look carefully, we have lost the transformation to the image. Again, the images are all getting flattened. In order to keep that transformation, in addition to the transformation that we applied to all the images right here, we're going to add another parameter. It's going to be called WebKit transform style. And we'll tell it to preserve any 3D inside this element. And now you can see that it's a little dramatic, but my transformation is still happening. And maybe I'll rotate this a little bit less. So you can see that it's preserving the 3D appearance of internal transformations while translating or transforming the rest of the group of the images. Transformations on objects and groups is a great way to add perspective to your projects, but when they really come alive is when you combine them with transitions, which we'll cover next.